So joining us today on BeerNet Radio is Jeremy Marshall, who's known as the head Brewmonster at Petaluma, California-based Lagunitas Brewing Company. He's been with the company for, almost 2 decades, 18 years. He joined after completing the brewing program at UC Davis. And he's seen the company through early aughts rocket ship growth, Heineken acquisition, and Craft's struggle the past few years. But through it all, he's remained a constant fixture at the brewery. He opened the Disorderly House of Brewing Innovation Lab a few years ago I got to go to. And he frequently appears in viral social media posts as a mascot of sorts. So welcome, Jeremy.
That's very generous.
And the fun fact is my first brewery visit as a baby beer editor was to Lagunitas in fall 22. And I got escorted around the region, even though I'm from California. I'd never been to that part of the state, on what's called a dip tour. And so I got to learn kind of the lore behind the brand from the founders, Tony McGee. So why is that the best vehicle to introduce a newbie to Lagunitas, and what kind of happens on a dip?
That's a good question. Do you really want to know?
Yes.
Yeah, you got to do it though.
I did.
So, a history, and as the industry has changed and people have changed, and even beer has changed and drinking has changed, it's really important to get back to the roots of what motivated the original people. So the dip is everyone piles into a van and it tours all of the parks, which is technically West Marin County, even though the brewery settled in Sonoma County. But it goes to, for instance, like here's the location where Tony had the brewery and famously broke the community septic tank, which is, used to be a grocery store. And then here is the bar, the Paper Mill Saloon, where he got his first keg sale back when you would brew a batch, and then you also, when it's small, you have to wear all the hats, right? So, this is 1993, and it's like a moving visual and verbal storytelling history through all of these places where people can really lay eyes on it and experience it themselves and kind of really understand it.
It's almost like what's it called? Universal Studios backlot tour, but for beer.
We like to think it's more like the end of the Vacation movie when Chevy Chase kidnaps John Candy. It feels a little bit more like that because you're captive and you're kind of like, what have I signed up for? And of course, there's some beer drinking that goes along. But then by the end of it, you're fully in and you're having a good time. And there's always oysters.
Yes, my mind was blown that this was my new job and this was what I got paid to do.
Much worse things, right?
Wait, I gotta ask, how did Tony break the septic?
Oh, well, he was kind of a famous story now that brewers are, a lot of us started out as home brewers, so we didn't really think about our effluent, which is a fancy word for brewery waste. So it means like yeast, and that yeast was going into the septic, and it was a community septic, and then that was making gas that was overwhelming the rest of the residents' backflow. So you can imagine that he was getting a lot of dirty looks that day. And that's when he famously got kicked out of West Marin and had to start sniffing around a bigger city, which happened to be Petaluma, California, where I sit today.
So, Jeremy, I mean, you look the part. You look like you hang out with rock stars. So it's not exactly surprising that this year's big innovation from Lagunitas is your summer LTO collab with Iron Maiden. It's called Trooper West Coast IPA. There's the can in all its glory. I've got a t-shirt with it. It's great imaging. And you revealed the new LTO at the Dogpile Wholesaler meeting I was at in January. We'll have to see if Harry can plug in the picture of me and you and the zombie mascot Eddie. So how did you foster this relationship with Iron Maiden? How'd this come to be?
Well, they were kind of searching for a U.S. partner, and then turns out we actually owe someone who I've never even met. So Bruce Dickinson, who's the front man and lead singer of Iron Maiden, he also has a solo project, and he's also a beer fan and a entrepreneur. I've learned more about Bruce. He's just a humble, brilliant guy, but also very accessible. And he kind of approached us, but his son's wife was kind of lives in the Bay Area or familiar with the Bay Area and put the Lagunitas bug in his ear. It's like you do all this stuff with these breweries, in the UK, obviously, because he's British, and also Brazil. Hey, why not Lagunitas? So he kind of had that bug in his ear. So when I meet this wonderful lady, I really got to thank her because that helped make this relationship happen.
And I think you told me that you went backstage last year with him to do a tasting like around the time of GABF.
So October of last year was Aftershock, which is all the who's who and metal and just loud. I've never seen so many speakers, and we went backstage, and I had a whole smattering of beers, including the ones that we were going to send off to GABF. So it was a really wide range, and Bruce latched on to this. The original beer was called Yakimopolis because it was a play on that movie, whether you liked it or hated it or haven't seen it. And then Yakima being this metropolis of hops, so we used all of the usual suspects of Yakima like Simcoe and Citra and the new one Crush, and really this beautiful West Coast IPA. And he this was when I kind of first impression met Bruce. Sat down, backstage. There's really famous people walking around if you're into punk metal, and he's just so focused on the tasting, and he had the most incredible feedback. And it was when I realized that he's got an amazing palate. And then that was my first meeting with Bruce, and I've since had two more amazing visits with him in the past year after that. But just sitting down, realizing that he's insanely accessible, very intelligent, and just really has an amazing palate. And then he's a foodie too. He starts giving you like his recipes for porridge, which porridge scares Americans. Let's face it.
Porridge and foodie is not typically used in the same sentence.
Well, he has a culinary porridge that it's like I call it like hipster porridge. It's pretty elaborate, and it's part of his secret.
So he's safe to say he's pretty involved and he's not just slapping the Iron Maiden mascot and logo on the can.
Very involved. Yes, I went down to L.A. to David Grohl's studio 606, I think it was, and presented like this is not the 16-ounce can here is it's going to be a 12-ounce can, but I made these myself and brewed it and canned it myself and had to give it to him and get his impression, and it was like it felt like I was on Shark Tank or something. He had to say, well, you've done really nice with the sweetness and the bitterness. He put it on the mixing board and he slid the knobs around so that when I saw him recently, and he did a conference in Miami that he invited me to, and I brought the most recent batch where I incorporated all those changes, and he was like, this time you've really nailed it. And I was like, ooh. like that was a close shave. I felt like, I didn't get it perfect the first time in his eyes, but he said I was 90% of the way there. And then when he had it in Miami, he said, I just love what it's doing to my palate and how clean it is. I did a little bit better on the color because the first one I made accidentally slightly hazy. Didn't mean to do that, and nailed it on that last one. So super involved.
And it's hitting in six packs, correct? And on draft.
Yeah, yeah. It's a national release, going everywhere, going on tour. We have our big event this Saturday, which 6/6/26. Just had to throw that out there.
Very apropos.
Yep,
Um,
yep.
and so what else can we expect from the collab that's summer? It times with they've got a US tour. Well, it's an international tour, right? But the US leg kicks off later this summer.
Yeah, we got some fun stuff. There's going to be some Eddie's Dive Bar activations, and if you don't know Eddie, because Eddie is dead, he's always around. Let's see if we can get Eddie in there. Hold on. Oh, there's Eddie right there. And Eddie is a coworker who's been very involved on this beer. Oh, there he is. We got Eddie. We got Eddie right there. Yeah, it turns out it's easy to summon the dead because they're just kind of waiting in the spirit land for opportunities to drink beer and come and party. So there's going to be Eddie's Dive Bar activation, and then beyond that, we're recruiting, we're hiring. Thank you, Eddie. You can go back to the underworld. Poor Eddie has a boring meeting coming up, so I said let's save you from part of that. Yeah, it turns out they have meetings in the afterlife. Can you believe it? Beetlejuice
Yeah.
was right. It turned out there's a lot of waiting rooms and bureaucracy out there. But so Eddie's Dive Bar, we're gonna be recruiting fans to come and work, and we're going to put them to work like bartending and and pouring this beer for other fans. So it's really hands on getting the people involved. And I mean, if you've ever been to a show, bring earplugs. That's some solid advice. You can feel the thunder of the strings and the drums like inside all your organs. They get like rattled around. And the best thing to pair with that is a Trooper West Coast IPA because it kind of washes the noise down really well.
So the dive bars, those are activations outside concert venues, or they're within the stadiums that they're performing at.
I think it's both. I'm gonna look to
Okay.
my yeah, it's outside. Yeah,
Okay.
I guess we couldn't get Eddie inside past the tight security because they have their Eddie, which is like the real Eddie. We have our Eddie, which is the beer drinking Eddie.
Yeah, like I said, you are beer royalty, and you've been at Lagunitas for 2 decades now. And can you just talk a little bit about those early days and joining Tony McGee and the crew, and what was it like back then?
Oh man. Well, when I first joined here, everybody played in a band, and I mean everybody, right down to all the brewers. In fact, the head brewer said, "This is it. My band is going on tour, and we're going big, and yeah, you can have my job." And that was like roughly 2005, and it wasn't. I mean, it was like it wasn't a job; it was a lifestyle back then. You worked really long days, and you were crafting things with your hand. And I kind of rose through the ranks. I did packaging and cellar work and filtration with a media doesn't even exist anymore. Diatomaceous earth is more or less gone, but that's what brewers did back in the day. Got to see all the equipment and the equipment suppliers evolve and everything improve. As everybody knows, in the old days, it was just Frankenstein dairy tanks and stuff clobbered together that you found in the boneyard of a dairy or whatever. And I like to think that where we are now is almost like coming full circle, and I can expound on that a little bit more later. But to everyone talks about all the doom and gloom, but personally, I'm loving it because it's not just a right sizing. It's like a getting back to your roots. The old days were crazy though because we would work 5 days a week, and then we would also work Saturdays and Sundays because we voluntarily would go and do all of the festivals. I know beer festivals are kind of also having a moment. They're not quite as popular as they once were, but they used to be like every weekend, especially when the weather was nice. So we're talking like, now, like May, June. It always kicked off with Boonville, which still happens. It's an epic beer fest, very brewer centric. And it felt like, and still is that all of the craft brewers for the region were a community, and everyone kind of helped everyone out, whether or not it was tips or yeast. And we're kind of coming back to a little bit of that right now as everybody hunkers down, so to speak. And a big part of that, right, is collaboration culture. But I would argue that everyone was collaborating well before there was, collaborations. But yeah, the early days were just crazy. It was a blur. The 420 parties, the beer circuses. If you guys ever made it to one of those, or if you've heard the stories, everything you heard, definitely true. See things you can't unsee. Well, there's a couple performers we had to ask not to come back. Um, and it was adults 21 and up, and it was too much for some of us even. So, but yeah, all of that was a big giant blur, and kind of a roller coaster ride at the same time.
Yeah, I'll let you expand on that full circle moment, but to get there, how have things kind of stayed the same and how have things changed? Outside of the obvious of new ownership, but what's been the through line through your 2 decades there at Lagunitas?
Yeah, the through line is, we're still a brewery, and we make beer for people who love beer. It definitely was an interesting to see the rise and fall of seltzer, right? Which was a
Yeah.
thing that was like beer, right? The TTB says it's beer, but you get a craft brewer like myself, and we kind of look at it like, well, that's not beer, right? No malt, no hops. What's going on here? And then someone's like, you remember Zima? And it's like, oh man, bad days in high school. I remember Zima. It was, and then now, we have these other products that are very, they kind of can be taxed like beer. But the thing with Lagunitas is, we make beer with hops. We know not everybody wants all those hops, and then we branched out and said, well, maybe people might like, I say every action has an equal and opposite reaction, right? So like brown sugar and beers like that, gnarly wine, the things that kind of were in our early DNA, Maximus. It led to the development of hoppy refresher, and then that led to the revelation that maybe people don't want to plow their face in a hop field in a hop water. Maybe they want something that's a little bubbly and refreshing and just a hint of hops, not like, sucking on a hop cone. And then, of course, all the products the craft brewers are, begrudgingly now making, right? You can find the craft brewers now making seltzers for their tap room, even if they don't commercialize one, right? So it was also like the hazy thing was kind of funny because back in the early 2000s, remember I mentioned the diatomaceous earth filter. Brewers didn't know how to filter. They didn't have good filters. So I remember when all the beers were hazy. The brewmaster at Anchor was telling me about the original New Albion beer that was like legendary as an early California craft. And he's like, imagine drinking a bottle full of yeast. It was just so cloudy. He was telling me how everything used to be hazy back then. And so all these things are cyclical. They all move around, right? So it's kind of fun to watch it. And even what's happening with like GABF, for instance. I'm super excited about being smaller and outside, and it just seeing the whole thing evolve. To me, it's very exciting, and I think it's an opportunity.
And you talk about these different waves that have happened in your time there. Do you feel like your directive, or better yet, your interest in what to brew or tinker with or innovate with has shifted, maybe with some of these waves, or just where your own feeling as you grow older?
Yeah, we used to. So Lagunitas and me personally was never super hot on style. But what's funny is like if you flip through the style guidelines, there's a lot of really inspirational stuff in there. So we're starting to kind of like we brewed a Kolsch, for instance, and like we would never normally do that. You would
Right.
never associate. So we're kind of getting in and into some of the fun styles. And, I mean, it is a cliche, but the more things change, the more they stay the same. There's a little bit of that happens. You see every idea have its moment in the sun, and then it kind of, fades out. And it's really one of the things for me that's been just very fulfilling has been getting to know the hop farming community, regardless of their geography. They are to me such a big part of my life. And if you are known for making IPAs and hoppy beers, I think these are the unsung heroes that really exist. And one guy, Steve Peralt, that's Jason Peralt's father. I asked him once what he thought about the trend of craft beer kind of going down and the rise of things that use almost no hops or no hops at all, like seltzers. And he said something that swims around in my brain every time things seem gloomy. And he said, "People that like beer are always going to drink beer." And I just love that. That's the type of like short wisdom that you get from a hop farmer, and it's exactly what I think a craft brewer needs to always keep in mind as you see some very interesting products come out that I would argue, yeah, they're innovating, but they're also like some of them are. I'm not going to name any examples, but some of them are like repulsive, or your first instinct is like, what? Like they're kind of, and but at the same time, everybody's playing and everybody's trying to move with a fickle consumer, or they're trying to either be an extremely fast follower, which hey, right? Sometimes the first is not always the one that makes it, right? Or they're just trying to throw all the crazy stuff out and see what works, because right, the people are different and the world is different. So you do need to evolve. So at the same time that I think some of that stuff is a little weird, or maybe it's not beer at all. I also say, well, more power to you. Try all that crazy stuff. Maybe we'll see something you did that inspires us, and we'll make a beer out of it.
Yeah. Yeah,
Mhm.
you with that wisdom you shared, it's just funny because as these RTDs try to rise and kind of work their way into the beer space, I've heard beer regarded as an acquired taste more than I ever have. That's kind of their little subtle dig, I feel like, into beer. And uh, is that with people who like beer, they're going to drink beer? Is that something that beer needs to worry about? Is that something that they need to change? Is it returning to something old or trying something new? A bit of both.
Yeah, I think I think beer needs to be beer now more than ever. That's our point of differentiation. A few years ago, everyone talked about the what was it called, the great coming together, where everything was getting smushed and smooched together.
The
The blurring of
convergence.
the lines. You
Yeah.
always heard these. I'm not so good on all the industry jargon, but you know what I mean. It was
Yeah.
like everything was getting smushed together, and it was like, all right, now there's like hard oat milk. That's the new thing. You know what I mean? It was like it was getting to be a lot of like stuff to navigate, and now it kind of feels like we're living in the opposite of that time. And so that's why I say beer needs to be beer now more than ever. And it's always been a accessible thing. It's always been something that brought people together, and it's always been, something. I mean, when I think of like what beer was, what the first time I found my dad's beer, he was a PBR guy, and that's I think what you were kind of alluding to is like an acquired taste, like that. So many people remember that first sip and then said, "Oh, it reminded them," and they say a lot of unsavory things of what it reminded them of. But then something happens and you get older and then you learn to appreciate that taste. And then all of a sudden, you're learning to appreciate the difference between 10 macro lagers, right? I mean, some people can actually blind taste 10 macro lagers that other people would argue all those beers are garbage. And they could blind pick out all 10. And that to me is like that's what it's all about, right? That's letting beer be beer right there.
I read online, so you correct me if I'm wrong, that the rest that you got the job at Lagunitas for the recipe for a little something something.
Yeah, yes and no. So I
Okay.
was I was already here, and Tony he had hops and malts in some of the recipes that I pointed out to him. Like I'm like Tony, like this hop here, like they don't grow it anymore. And so like I was trying to introduce like some of the more modern varieties, especially taking note of like what the farmers were getting behind. Remember I mentioned the relationship with the farmers. So
Yeah.
it's important to go where they're going, so to speak. And also malts. There was just a lot of stuff. So he let me write Imperial Red Ale, which dark beer didn't used to scare people, but back then that was a big deal for me personally, and it was a mild success. So then after that, I think it was a few years. I've been here for a few years. He said he had the concept that I think came from some sort of lyrics in a Tom Waits song. That was where that little something something was uttered. Tony was a musician first and foremost, so he was super into. That's where the Lagunitas music and the DNA kind of comes from.
Yeah.
That all started with him. So he kind of started telling me about the song, and then it became a beer, and then he said he really trusted me to go forward. And so, I took some of at the time, it was all about the C hops, right? It started with Centennial, Cascade, Columbus, and then before you know it, you had like Citra and some of the more popular names that you've heard. And so that was originally a C hop beer, heavy charge of wheat. It was really easy to get Tony's buy-in because when Tony first moved here from Chicago and his brother gave him the homebrew kit, and then he kind of stepped up from there. He became friendly with some of the other brewers of the area. Like there was Grant at Black Diamond and Randy at Third Street Ale Works, and just little places. A lot of which some of these places aren't even around anymore. And the one thing that they told him was like apparently they love to use wheat. They love to sneak a little bit of wheat into all their beers. So Tony already had that going in there. So it was pretty easy sell to say let's do kind of a wheat IPA that's maybe not really an IPA, but it's a heavily hopped wheat beer that's an ale, and that became little something something, and then that's evolved over the time. We did the little something wild, little something extra, little something. What was it? We did like a lower ABV. We did like all the little something you name it, back circa 2009, 10, something like that. And then, the things marched on, SKU rationalization, pandemic, um, the theory that everyone lost their sense of smell, and then that really made seltzers rise really quick because nobody could smell or taste anymore. I love that theory. Uh, and then now we're just kind of coming full circle, and everybody's reaching for what means something to them again.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
that's kind of your baby. And what is it like seeing that brand get new life and start to grow again and have this resurgence?
It's great. It's really exciting to me personally as a brewer because the when brands are growing like that. It increases the chances that consumers in faraway places are their first experience is going to be with the fresh beer, So I think Nietzsche said man's greatest tragedy is he was once a child, and I say beer's greatest tragedy is that it was once fresh. So nothing's worse than being in some market in some faraway place and getting something and being like, this isn't how it should be, right?
Yeah.
And so when things are growing like that, they're usually unilaterally fresh out there, which is like super exciting. We put Millie back on there. I think
Yeah.
that was a huge driver, just having that kind of iconic imagery on there, and getting kind of back to how it used to look and feel.
Anything else you're tinkering with in the innovations lab? It's called Disorderly House of Brewing, right?
Yep. So many things. I can't even name. We're gonna do. So remember, if you remember the tea product that we did
Mm-hmm.
with the cousin of yerba mate guayusa, we still love that and drink that. We just had a cup of it brewed with cinnamon. That's just like the not the hard version, just the tea. But we're gonna make a whole bunch of that to kind of under like a new name, look and feel for local release. We got GABF coming up. We do rotating hazies, rotating West Coasts. People like to drink colors now, especially the younger crowd. So I'm super into, you're not allowed to say natural colors for some reason, but you can say, we use colors from nature. So you can get, blue
Colors from
from
nature.
from algae. You can get red from carrots, and you can get all these really cool colors. You can get every color in the rainbow, and you don't have to use anything artificial. So it's expensive, but we do a little bit of that. Yeah, I have a, a lot of different ideas. Super glad you guys didn't hit me with the like, what's the next big thing? Because everybody's working on that. Nobody knows. People pretend like they do, but at the end of the day, we're all just swimming together, right? So,
I had one more for you, and it's not what's the next big thing, but you you helped Lagunitas craft hi-fi back in the day, and
mhm.
um, when you were getting to work on that, did you ever really think that cannabis and I guess now hemp, um, let's just say THC, did you ever think THC and the bev alc industry would intersect like it has today?
I think a lot of us not only it was a matter of if, not when, and it's still a matter of now. It's a matter of when, not if. I think in my mind we always thought California 1996. I'm practically still in high school, but it made national news. Prop 215 medical, and then you looked at what happened after that with all the states one by one, and then recreational, and then it's kind of just state by state, just saying, you know what, like this it could just be treated like bev alc, right? It could just be sold through the same channels. It really just needs to be legal and regulated and create a little revenue for everybody, right? And so, with the Farm Bill, they were trying to come up with something to help out farmers that farm tobacco, right? And tobacco is not what it used to be. And they thought hemp could replace it. And then turns out they accidentally, oopsies, legalized weed because it turns out 0.3% by weight in a finished product can be quite a bit of a firepower, right? So now we're in the aftermath of that oopsies, and I think that it's hard to stuff the genie back in the bottle.
Yeah.
So something's gonna happen. I am proud though. That first off, Santa Rosa is so close to Petaluma that I could just go up there. We have a hard line in the sand on how those innovations happen, so we don't mix the license type. So I went up there to their innovation lab, and I continue to. And as we look to see what else we could do with that, but very proud to have been. I think we were the one of the first beverages in the space, under the state of California legal rec. That was what, 2019, I
Yeah, I
think.
remember that. Yeah.
There weren't beverages were not very nascent, and I'm pretty sure we were the first brewery to be associated with such a product, and even got that to the finish line, no problem. And back then it was a little bit different because we had like we had like a CBD one. There was like a 18-to-1. We had the only ones today are only the 10 and the 5 and 5, only available in California at licensed dispensaries.
Yeah.
So, but it's been fun to watch what's happened with the whole D9 boondoggle, I'll call that. And I love you guys for covering it because that's how I know what's happening in states I never make it to.
Appreciate that. What do you think as someone who's been in the industry for, a couple decades, what's behind craft's recent slide? And innovation wise, what is kind of the step in the right direction to kind of turn that ship around?
Yeah, that's a great question. You guys cover it so well, and so I'll just be preaching to the choir, but a little bit of everything, so to speak. But when I look at like, there's still breweries that are growing, right? So
Hmm.
that's what gives me a lot of comfort. And I know some of them are really small, but they're being like really, really true to who they are. One thing that came to mind is like when you went to the craft beer aisle and it just started to get too crazy. I mean, there were like labels that were like in Braille and they had nothing to, it was just like, what else can we do? We're going to do it all. Like it started to get like out of touch. Right. And it really, I think it pushed away the consumer, and that consumer was already maybe moving away already,
Hmm.
right? And so whether or not we pushed them towards just the easy, 30 pack of a macro brew, or maybe towards a bottle of Maker's Mark, we don't know, or they're just, moderating and not buying as much stuff as is. And so now, you see a lot of focus. You see a lot, not just Lagunitas, but like our competitors. I think they're all, more or less doing the right thing and trying to have like really disciplined sets and things that make sense. And like I think the consumer wants to look at it and like feel the authenticity of like, can I figure out what this is? If I buy that, what am I getting? Like they need to know that quickly, right? And I think we're getting we lost that and now we're getting back to that. Like consumers can kind of look, if they're a IPA drinker, they can navigate the aisle and they can find the one or two that they like, or the new one they want to give a shot. Or if they're a lager drinker, they can do likewise with the craft lager. We had lost that, I think, a little while ago, and it was just like, "Bruh." And then the consumer just like ran the other way, or maybe they bought an RTD. And I still maintain that I like bartenders to make my drinks because I'm not sure how all those ingredients age inside of a can. But then again, I've said a lot of things, so you know.
Yeah. I agree with you. I think you can see the focus um, back in craft, and you can see people returning to those tried and true mainstays too. They after some experimentation, it feels like people are kind of going back to staples, and I think better days are ahead, indeed.
I certainly agree, and I remain optimistic.
Yeah. Well, Jeremy, you're a legend. Thank you so much for taking the time and joining us, and can't wait to hopefully see you and Eddie and the whole Lagunitas crew on
Yeah,
tour.
thanks for having me, guys. Come to think of it, I need to go see what Eddie's up to over there. I hear some commotion, so yeah, appreciate it, and I'll see you guys at the next big meeting.
Thank
Awesome.
you.
Thank you.
Cheers.